The Atlanta Business League is the South's oldest and most influential minority business development and advocacy organization. Since its inception in 1933, the ABL has earned the support and respect of business and civic leadership for creating an environment that affords increased communications and partnering opportunities for and between minority and majority businesses. While our history is important, today we must focus on our future. The COVID-19 pandemic is ever-changing and is having a devastating effect on Metro Atlanta and surrounding communities. The health, safety, peace of mind, and sustainability of our members, as well as our community, are paramount to the Atlanta Business League. With that as a priority, the ABL is hosting Zoom webinars to update our members on issues, opportunities, and stimuli that could impact their ability to stay in business and survive. Welcome to the ABL Weekly COVID-19 Issues and Opportunities series.
I'm Leona Barr Davenport, President and CEO of the Atlanta Business League, and I'd like to welcome you to the ABL Weekly COVID-19 Issues and Opportunities series. Today is Tuesday, April 21st. Our subject today is understanding federal policy, regulations, and unemployment options for small business sustainability. I'd like to bring to your attention that in your chat room, you have a resource guide. And there is also in the chat room that if you have questions, please enter those questions as our speakers are speaking. If you already have questions, go ahead and begin to type them in now. At the end of the survey, at the end of the meeting today, we will send a survey to you to get your feedback on the topic and also to hear from you what you'd like to hear in the future. Our speakers today are excellent and passionate gentlemen who work in their professions, and we're so excited to have them. We have Mr. Bruce LeVell, Region 4 Advocate of the Office of Advocacy with the U.S. Small Business Administration, and Keith Parker, President and CEO of Goodwill of North Georgia. We'll begin with Mr. Bruce LeVell. Bruce, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me. So
yes.
We're going to get through this, Leona. And,
we will.
But God's got it. Well, my name is Bruce LeVell, and I serve at the pleasure of the president, and I'm responsible for the entire Southeast. That's Alabama, Mississippi, Florida, South Carolina, North Carolina, Kentucky, and of course here Georgia. And I get the great privilege of going around traveling and talking to great business owners across this South, as well as the Southeast per se. And I do talk to some out of the other regions also, but our main focus and goal is pretty much to get an idea what are some of the troubling regulations as it relates to statute related, meaning a congressional law or something like that, that hinders your business, or a executive administrative type of regulation that kind of harms your business a little bit. And if you noticed, when the president came in, one of his goals was to cut some of the regulations and free up some of the burdensome regulations that are on businesses that give them, more freedom to operate a little easier. January 2017, he signed $1 billion executive order releasing, $1 billion, and said for every one regulation you had to cut two, and that was pretty much trying to give the small businesses a little more light, because some regulations were redundant, some were antiquated, as you might say, or old on the books and had to be, changed out basically on the fast growing technology and somehow the businesses are growing. But I have great news for Georgia. I was looking at we got the new census, and Georgia's number 2 for minority owned business. Of course, they say DC is, but I think it's Georgia number 1. I think they miscalculated, but that's good news. With all the COVID type of news you see out there and and I don't want to say this respectfully, negativity, because it gets a little overwhelmingly sometime when you turn to different networks and you hear all the, I like to say respectfully, doom and gloom. But I like to say in light of this, what's about to come, you saw where the governor and some of the places around the country are starting to open up, is a wonderful opportunities as it relates to new businesses that are going to come up, new ingenuity that's going to, should I say, be discovered, invented. And, in light of this too, with this COVID-19, we're in a medical crisis. We're not in a financial crisis. Some of you remember in 2008 9, well, I'm sure we all do, as how hard it was, especially in Georgia. Between us and Vegas, we were the hardest hit in some of the housing markets as it relates to a lot of homes being underwater and some of the commercial properties. And just to give you a life, where I'm at, I'm a locally owned business owner. My wife and I have a business in Gwinnett and Dunwoody for 27 years. So I took a position with the White House to serve because of what I've been through as a business owner. Unlike some of our viewers here as it relates to, what you might have been through in the '09 crash or some of the challenges you have. And there's one thing I remember when we went through the financial crash. My bank failed, and some of the folks of other banks failed and were taken and taken with the taxpayers' money and sold and given to other banks. And then those banks called loans for no reason, and it created such a really catastrophe. And then, of course, that's where Dodd-Frank was resurrected. Dodd-Frank was a new regulation that tried to impose new regulations on small banks, big banks. I've been a very strong advocate for small community banks and small banks because I knew that that was a pretty much life support, especially in the minority community. I mean, I actually I've always relied on small community banks when I started my business in '94, and know how those small working relationships are vital, especially in minority-owned business. And a lot of those small banks got kind of gobbled up a little bit. So, pivoting back to where I'm at now, I took a leave from my business to serve, to get out to be an advocate and understand what these challenges are. There's 12 of us around the country, and all of us pretty much own a business. So I don't plan to stay here forever, but I do enjoy having some input with the president to let them know exactly, especially in the ground game, on the small business. Small business, of course, 0.6 million small business that we have right now, and 8% of those are Black owned. And so Georgia, has phenomenal numbers. And I like to say in terms of the optimism here is that once we get up and going, I had several calls, and a lot of my calls are more. I like to say it as a cheer because I do believe, and I know we're going to come out of this, and I know that a lot of businesses are going to resurrect and prevail, and we're going to come back even stronger. And I'm telling everyone to hold on, especially the bill the president signed in terms of opportunity zones, where I have friends and colleagues who are doing private partnerships together, building apartment complexes, and obviously there's some of the underserved communities. Once again, I'm an extreme advocate on really having my thumb on Dodd-Frank and trying to push back more local control and dereg some of the small banks and let them come back into the forefront and have more decision makings from a local standpoint instead of something on a very high regulated entity, which really harms and hurts a lot of small businesses getting loans and access to capital. And so that's something that I'm really, really focused on, because I know, once again, that is a great life support, especially in the minority community. Also, the president mentioned, and, of course, Speaker Pelosi also had talked about the infrastructure bill. And I wanted to say it was going to, probably be drafted this year, but obviously we're going through this, I'd say adjustment, a little bump in the road. And I say, stay tuned. I did a webinar with one of your board directors and, with an engineering firm, a large engineering firm. And I told them, I said, hold on, get ready. The infrastructure bill was at $1 trillion. Now they're saying $2 trillion. We have our transit models that have to be rehabbed and expanded. MARTA here being the 7th largest, transit authority in the country. And you see the sky's the limit in terms of ability to expand our roads and bridges. And so, I have to say, stay tuned and be ready, because this is going to be a phenomenal injection of economic stimulus, as you might say, in terms of the growth, especially in Georgia, largest airport in the world, Atlanta Hartsfield. We have some of the best universities. We have CDC. We have all these great businesses as well as small businesses here that really make this a great city. So I say, we will stay #1. Most friendly city and most friendly to do business with, and we'll even get better. So with that, I yield back to Leona. Thank you.
Thank you, Bruce. And now we'll hear from Mr. Keith Parker. It appears that Keith is muted.
Also, Leona, could I add something?
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. Also, for all the viewers out there, I'm very curious to know some of the challenges that you're having. And my email is bruce.levell@sba.gov, and I know Leona and ABL will push that out there and also receive some of the questions. But I just wanted to make sure you have that you can personally send me, and I definitely will get an answer or find an answer for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Keith?
Well, good morning, Leona, and good morning, Bruce, and all the folks who are listening to us here and watching us. I'm actually at our headquarters in Decatur, Georgia, and everyone jokes whenever they see this background asking me, Keith, are you in church? Well, though we need prayer, we all do need prayer. I'm actually in my offices. Goodwill opened its first facility here in North Georgia back in 1925 off of Auburn Avenue. And the one thing we were able to keep from that original facility were these stained glass windows that are behind me. And they were actually about to be destroyed and go into the landfills. And when we rebuilt this building that I'm currently in about 3 years ago, someone remembered that, hey, those stained glass windows are still available. And now they're part of the most prominent room that we have in this entire 90,000 square foot campus that we work out of here in Decatur. So again, we're thrilled to be with you, and thank you for the opportunity to have a chat with you. So I have some slides I wanted to go through. The first one, if we can put up, about today's objectives. And I have an assistant here with me. Tanae, are you seeing that today's objective slide on the screen now? So gentlemen and the IT group, if you all can put the first slide up. So it would say today's objectives, understanding Goodwill's mission, and learning how we can help you. So I don't want to waste any time, so we'll keep going, and then they can catch up with me as necessary. But as I mentioned, we do have a few slides. If I need to just do that without, we can certainly make that work. But I get two goals this morning: understanding what our mission is here at Goodwill of North Georgia, and then secondly, we can help you with your small businesses in carrying out many of your activities. Goodwill's mission, going back well over 100 years now from the national organization, is to put people to work. That mission is very much rooted in knowing that the single biggest thing you can do with any family, any community that's in crisis, is to help provide sustainable employment for that individual, for that family, for that community. The impact of Goodwill here in North Georgia has become pretty immense, that we have with over 100 facilities, our economic impact is now approaching close to $1 billion annually here in the state of Georgia. We have enormous numbers of programs ranging from educational programs where we partner with many different local high schools, colleges, technical colleges, and so forth. And where we come in, the typical high school see their graduation rate go from the low 70% to over 99%. And then of those folks who stay on with us, they either, we have at this point a 100% success rate of students either finding a job, that we help them find a job right after graduating, or that they go on to college. So we're having tremendous success on the education front. And then environmentally, Goodwill has become one of the most environmentally impactful groups of all the nonprofits and all organizations because of the very way we do our business. And that is, we help divert things that ordinarily may go into landfills and other places, and instead repurpose and recycle them, and they become the new treasures for other folks. How does it all work? Very simply. When you donate your lightly used goods or make a financial donation to Goodwill, we turn that into shopping opportunities at one of our stores, take the profit from those shopping opportunities and turn it into workforce development, workforce training. We now are the largest workforce development, workforce training job connector in the nonprofit in the entire Southeast. And I'll talk to you a little more about that. But the Goodwill brand is such a positive brand. In fact, every year, there's a world value index done of all the different brands out there, the Googles and the Girl Scouts and the Amazons and so forth. And Goodwill has ranked in the top 10, including being #1 in one of those years, every year for the past 10 years. So people have a very good and positive attitude when they think about the Goodwill brand. And we'll talk to you a little bit more about that in a moment. But right now, part of what we try to do is be extraordinarily convenient. Goodwill of North Georgia is growing pretty immensely. We have 2 brand new stores that will open up come around that July 1 timeframe, just depending on how things materialize, which will bring our total number to 67 stores, plus an additional 55 or so donation centers, meaning we have now passed target in the state of Georgia for the number of facilities in our overall retail footprint. We at this moment within the North Metro area, so somewhere in the neighborhood of 95% of all folks are within a 10-minute or so drive to a local Goodwill or donation center. So we make it very convenient for you to shop, to donate, and doing all those different things. And the way we run our business, we run it like a very well-oiled machine in terms of efficiency, in terms of getting things done with less. Most people think because we're a nonprofit that we get lots and lots of money from the federal government. Couldn't be federal and state government, couldn't be anything more untrue. We almost exclusively rely on those donations that you make to us and turn that into profit. Less than 4% of our overall budget comes from the federal government, and almost all of that is through programs that we help people with disabilities and going directly to those types of programs. Our overhead rate is a little more than 8%, meaning we're one of the most efficient nonprofits. In fact, even comparing us to many for-profit companies, at a little more than 8%, we're one of the most efficiently run groups, again, anywhere in business. But our approach has really shifted over the years. Instead of just helping people find jobs, we now take what we call the ABC approach: a job, better job, and onto a career. So we are helping literally tens of thousands of people every year find positions. We had our most successful year ever in 2019, where just about 25,500 folks we helped find employment. And at the highest percentage ever, we helped them move into middle class and more sustainable types of positions. How do we do it? With our people. Our folks are extremely dedicated when it comes to getting things done and helping people find jobs. Our folks, many of you probably know, we shut down our stores a little more than a month ago as a result of the COVID-19, but our people are still working their butts off. Up until this past Saturday, we were still taking and processing our donations to get our stores ready for a grand reopening. So we have just literally tens of thousands of pounds of merchandise that we're going through now and filling up all of our stores with everything from furniture to clothing to computers and all sorts of other electronics. You name it, we have just lots and lots of those things ready to go into the stores. And we're going to make sure you're safe. We're taking the extra precaution. We follow all the CDC guidelines that tell us that this virus cannot survive beyond basically 3 days. And all of our stores, the merchandise will have been there much longer than that. But we're taking the extra precaution of sterilizing everything in our stores. We've got these foggers that we will put in the stores and basically blast the entire stores out, even the back rooms and so forth, to give you that extra sense of security that you may want and to improve the perception of shopping in a Goodwill store, because we're going to make sure that when we reopen bigger than ever. And next, I do want to shift into what we're doing with those dollars that we generate by you shopping in our stores and becoming part of the thrift business. And before I do that, I also want to encourage you. If you've not gone into a Goodwill store in recent months or in a couple of years, particularly try out one of our newer avenues. They look better than many of the for-profit, bigger non-thrift companies that you'll have out there. They are state-of-the-art hardwood flooring, LED lighting, all the types of things you'd expect in a first-class shopping experience. That's what we're providing for you at Goodwill of North Georgia. And when we reopen, bigger than anything we've had before. But what we're really all about, our mission, is to put people to work. And we recognize that here in North Georgia, there are lots of companies that can utilize some of the various resources and various services that Goodwill has. More than 5,000 different corporate partners we have in place right now of companies as big as Home Depot and as small as mom and pop operations of one proprietor who we're helping with their different businesses. And the businesses that we're helping mostly right now are the high demand folks. Our job training is still going. Our career services virtually are still happening. So Kroger, Publix, Amazon, Walmart, all need people right now. And we are providing them with high quality, well-trained folks who are coming in and getting jobs even during this period of enormous unemployment. And I'll delve into a little bit about one of those partners who we have with Amazon. Most people think, what in the world would Goodwill have to do with Amazon? Amazon's this gargantuan multinational company. So what can Goodwill possibly do for them? Well, some may know that when the Chamber of Commerce put together a team to try to woo Amazon to move to Atlanta a few years ago and bring one of their corporate headquarters here, I was part of that team. And we unfortunately didn't win that work, but our folks, our connections here at Goodwill, we immediately went out to the folks at Amazon because they now have about 4 different distribution centers here in North Georgia. We have worked so closely with them that we are now the #1 way they are finding talent. So of about the 5,000 people Amazon's hired in the North Georgia area over the last 18 months, Goodwill's provided about 2,600 of those folks. We're providing people, many of whom came to us making entry-level wages, $9 an hour, $10 an hour. And we're training them, giving them soft skills, giving them all the different things they need to be successful, and taking them out to a place like Amazon where the starting pay is now $17 an hour. We're also helping them find more of their supervisory staff and a whole host of other things. So you look at this big multinational company, and then you look at Goodwill of North Georgia, and they're working hand in hand to bring some success to the individuals. And again, as I mentioned, we're not closed. We have 13 different career centers sprinkled throughout North Georgia. And those career centers provide a variety of different services and so forth. And now the one that's getting all the attention is our virtual career center. It's called Career Connector. And you can go to it on our website. And at Career Connector, we're giving one-to-one types of training. We will review your resume. We will give you counseling about your cover letters. We will give you interview skills. And if you want to take it a step further, we'll actually work with you and put you in some of our certification type classes with our virtual career coaches, and they will help you analyze the weaknesses in your background and all the strengths. And it's a pure judgment-free, high dignity zone. Every person we view has the potential of reaching all of their dreams. And our folks treat you with the type of dignity and the type of professionalism that one would expect. So what can we do for you? This one-to-one career coaching that we do goes beyond just the individual. We also do it for companies. And so we will help you with customer service training for your folks. We'll help you with logistics. We'll help you with your IT. And we've particularly gotten good in the areas of hospitality. We work with Georgia Tech in a program we call Tech Bridge, getting people certified with skills that they can then take out to the marketplace and become much, much more marketable. And we're working in healthcare, entertainment, a number of other places. So virtually anything you can think of, Goodwill of North Georgia will partner with you in your respective small businesses to get you a bit more rooted into your program. Last thing I want to talk about is our Good Biz program. Good Biz, as I mentioned, we help tens of thousands of people find jobs every year. But there's a certain segment who decide, hey, look, I want to go it on my own. I want to do something on my own, start my own business. This program we have has helped hundreds of different companies get started. Everything from helping them put together their original business plan, helping them go out and get their financing together. Many of them go through the full 12 weeks of training that folks find to be very useful if they're opening their first business. In some cases, we bring companies in who've been around for years and years and years, but then they just think, there's something I may not be doing a little bit right, or something that maybe I could be a bit more refined on, the way I'm handling payroll, the way I'm handling HR issues, the way my IT is set up. We will help those companies find their greatest opportunity. And again, free of charge with the Good Biz program. A couple of folks who've gone through this, a company called Takes a Village Transportation came to us just a couple of years ago, and again, went through the entire 12-week program, helped her get her secure initial financing, started out with one van, now has another one, and on our way. And I could name literally dozens of other types of places right here in North Georgia that we've helped get their feet up under them so they can then reach their dreams. There's a great story we had of a gentleman who started up a company out of Athens, where he came to us after his wife called him up at 1 o'clock in the morning saying, well, child number 6 is on the way. And he was working at a Walmart doing stop type work, making $9 an hour. Fast forward, the guy's always been a great baker. So he started up in his mom's kitchen making cheesecakes. And then he went from there as his business grew to the local church. Came to us, we helped him refine his business plan. And now his company called Cheesecakepia makes over 135 different types of cheesecake, and they are doing extremely well. So that's just the type of business that we try to help out every single day. And I think I've reached my 12-minute limit. And thank you again, Leona, and the folks at ABL for giving us this chance to chat. And I think now we can take questions.
Thank you, Bruce and Keith. Thank you for those presentations and sharing that information with our participants this morning. We'll now move to questions and answers. Samantha, do you have any questions? While Samantha gets her first question ready, I want to remind everyone that the resource guide is included in the chat room. If you have questions, please go ahead and enter them now. We look forward to getting those questions. And right now, I'd like to go ahead and thank our sponsor for today, American Technologies. You'll hear more from them before the end of the session today.
The first question goes specifically to Bruce LeVell. This person says, I'm a small business owner who is an independent contractors on my payroll. We provide mental health services throughout Metro Atlanta. When I completed the PPP application, my bank representative called me to make me aware that they are not accepting applications with data for independent contractors and that I could only use my income. This was a big blow to me and my company, and it caused me to only qualify for $41,000 versus the $200,000 that I would have if my staff would have been included. My question, are there any options for small businesses to get COVID help if they have independent contractors?
Oh, thanks for the question. You know, I've actually heard this before, and I will say, and I'd like you to talk to you online some more because I do have some other ideas as it relates to this. But unfortunately, as everyone knows, the reference guide, obviously, for the gospel, what's going on as it relates to these PPP and the CARES Act is the SBA.gov. And it's definitely instant information in terms of where everything is as it relates to these type of funding. And the great news of this is that Congress is trying to get more money today as we speak and push more back into the program. And I based on the guidelines from what I read, it seems like that you would qualify based on what you're telling me. Now, I don't know for sure. That's why I'd like to have a more conversation with you, once we complete this program here, and try to help you and guide you in those where I can, give you more assistance on that. Because based on the guidelines that I read, that from what you're telling me, you qualify that. But I do know that some of the banks, especially when you have an existing relationship with the banks, are the best ways to go through these programs, because you already have, established yourself with that bank, and there is some, urgency for banks to assist their existing clients and, make sure they're doing okay, et cetera, versus going to an entity where, no one knows you. So I'd love to talk more with you after this, if that's okay.
Okay, another question for you, Bruce. Can you share any insights that you have related to the EIDL grant and loan for nonprofit organizations? This person applied back on April 2nd, and they have not heard anything at all.
Yeah, unfortunately, I hear this a lot. We ran out of money. And, that's why my prayers is that we get this COVID under get it knocked out so we can get our businesses back up and going. Because, you're one of many, many, many people that I hear all the time that they submit and don't hear anything. And now, we're out of money again. And that's what I said earlier, Congress is debating, well, they're going back and forth right now. And hopefully it'll get done today where they can fund this program some more and give some relief to our small businesses.
Okay, next question. How does a small business who has literally just started the week before this crisis, how does this business stay afloat when none of the COVID-19 programs apply?
Oh, wow. That's a tough one, and I say this with compassion, because I am, my family does have a small business, and some of my family members have small businesses that are affected the same way. And prayers, I know the great thing, like I said earlier when I opened, was that we're not in a financial situation. We're in a medical situation, and we did shut down the economy with 3.4 unemployment in some parts of the country, as low as 2.8, and a very robust. And I said earlier, Georgia being number one pretty much in the country in terms of business, and there's great growth. So my optimism is that this is going to get taken care of quick, and that we get this economy open back up. And I think that's going to be, respectfully, the savings grace for a startup business that came out the blocks and then hit this obstacle, is that when they did start off, we started off in a very robust economy, which we just halt. And so it affects everyone evenly. So it's an even playing field, unlike what happened in 2009, which was not an even playing field. So just hang in there.
I would add to that, I had a conversation with one of my board members yesterday, and this gentleman owns, in his family, go back years and years in the meat industry. They've provided meat and fish to some of the top restaurants and on the entire East Coast for years and years. And so he and I were chatting about one of the things that played Goodwill for a long time, and that was people didn't want to come into our career centers, or small businesses didn't want to connect to us because of this stigma, if you will, of, hey, look, I can't go into a Goodwill because that means I'm asking somebody. Oh, that stigma's gone.
Yeah.
No, it's nobody's fault as to what happened, as to why their small business might be in trouble right now, or why they lost their job. And so, and I bring it up because everybody should look for every possible resource they can find and hustle. I mean, now's the time to be hustling. So go to Bruce's group, go to the SBA, call Goodwill, call anybody you can, because there may be some piece of the puzzle that you're looking for your solution that we can help on. Don't wait. Don't sit back and think, I'll wait another 2 weeks before I make that phone call, or something else will fall in place. You've got any angle, any opportunity, go for it, because the groups who will survive from this will be the ones who have been most aggressive trying to get out.
Agreed. Yeah.
Agreed. Another question for you, Bruce. What is the status of the ABL program? This person's company applied for it several weeks ago, but the only communication that they have received has been that the application has been received. Yeah.
Once again, many people, many inquiries about this very question here. They ran out of money. And, it's one of those things where I don't think no one obviously could have predicted this. And this is the first time in the nation's history that we've actually done a program like this, and you know how it is when you do something new, something of this magnitude. It's never been vetted ever in the world, let alone we never done it in the United States. So my prayers, I hope that they go ahead and get the additional funding today, and so they can inject Treasury can inject money back into these programs. The great thing about this are folks who are sitting in the queue that have all their information in and waiting, is that when this gets funded, hopefully they'll prioritize, and the folks that have been in the queue will be funded. So that's my prayers today, literally, because I get these calls like I'm getting them now as we speak, in text messages and et cetera. So that's what my prayers are today, is that we get additional funding so we can get folks that are sitting there funded.
Okay, very good. Does the EIDL and the PPP, do they come out of the same funding appropriation?
I want to say yes, because they pretty much, like for the last time they went out for the Treasury funded it, it did come out of that big pool. So once again, today, hopefully they do approve, and I personally, I hope they double it, and come to grips. The great thing about this is that I believe that there's all hands on decks, because every congressperson has a constituent from all over the country, that here we are a month into this where, that it's such dire urgency, so they realize that they got to do something quick to stop some of the bleeding and to sustain their employees and sustain their businesses, or because this is like a dominoing effect. It affects the retail, small mom and pop. It affects the landlord, who you pay rent to the landlord. The landlord has a mortgage to the bank, and then it's up to the bank if they're going to work with the landlord in order to pass on to the retailer, who's the tenant. So it affects everyone. And like I said earlier, this is it's an even playing field, if you want to say it that way, because it's affecting everyone. It's not just a group over here and a group over here. So in light of that, I see the urgency, and I believe, Congress sees the urgency, because every single constituent in every district across this great nation is being affected to their, and their congressperson knows that. So like I said, I hope they resolve it today and get it funded quick.
Okay. How does the SBA plan to address the problem of small businesses, I guess, age or in business between 1 and 25 years, getting locked out of the PPP, and banks giving loans to large companies like Ruth Chris and others?
Yeah. Well, I don't really, have a comment per se on that, but I know that, it's hard to tell in terms of, when you go, like, for example, my bank, we've been there for about 20 years, and we have some level of relationship. And for a lot of the business people who applied for the PPP, you got to remember too, also, if you've been very efficient in terms of what the bank's going to require, like, for example, in most cases, 2 to 3 years, corporate tax returns, personal returns, updated financial, the credit, having all those boxes checked efficiently. And as well as I know, a lot of the business people on this Zoom, is that if one piece of information was not put in there, then sometimes it prolongs your approval, or you get another person comes in that has everything together. And that's why one of the things I've shared as I've traveled and talked to small businesses is having a very fast and efficient way of supplying those deals, especially if you want to get a line of credit or something, or expand your loan or what have you, is being very efficient in terms of what the requirements are and what you turn in to your local bank. So I think that's going to play a big role in terms of who is taken care of first. Not to say they're not going to take care of the other folks, but in terms of expediting and moving as fast as possible. And that's pretty much anywhere. So that's something I had to really make sure, help some of my friends and colleagues out to make sure and walk them through, like, okay, make sure all the dots are checked before you push in. Don't push some in and say, I'll get the rest later. Because I did find out that a lot of applicants had a lot of misinformation that they required. And so as fast as they're moving some, shuffling the papers and getting folks ahead of the line who have more of their information, gathered, up front together, and not just pieces.
Okay, Bruce, do you have any resources or Q&A documents that may be helpful for the audience? This person is asking from STEM Atlanta.
Yeah,
Women.
well, like I said earlier, everything that relates, especially in lending, is SBA.gov, from microloans to 504 loans, 7A loans, et cetera. And of course, the updates on the PPP and the CARES Act is constantly. I mean, this is literally the focal focus point of everything that goes on that relates to anything that's going on in this crisis is, and I'm glad for that, because it's not spread out all over different sites. So there is one hub of SBA.gov, and it is constantly updated, by the hour on anything that's going on. So that's pretty much all the references that it relates to that. And also too, not so much as just SBA.gov, but just, there are, I like to say, especially coming out of the crash, I know banks have a lot of cash out there, and there are some good relationships that people have with banks. And, I just say, talk to some of the local lenders, outside of this program, and you'd be surprised, because especially if they see a decent balance sheet that they can accommodate, and they know what you're going through, whatever. So there's some cash out there. And if I always say this, if you ask someone and this bank says no, and I'm speaking out of experience, when I first started 27 years ago, you ask the next person, sooner or later, it's just like Keith said, I think respectfully, never to exhaust all your resources. Credit unions are able to do business loans also when they haven't had in the past. And that's why earlier in our conversation, I'm really into this effect, in my heart, because of what I saw, what happened in 08, 09, where we really need smaller community banks, especially for these type of situations where, I always say small bank, small business, medium bank, medium business, big bank, big business, big bank, small business, So just, hang in there and just go have conversations with various bankers, and you'd be surprised what you get from them.
And Bruce, I would add that as well, companies, particularly small companies, need to be able to pivot. Think about what are the fundamentals of what your business are, but maybe right now they aren't as in demand, but you can take those skill sets that you've developed, talk with the SBA, talk with us, talk to our career folks, and see about what are those high demand things that have mushroomed out of this crisis. Amazon started out as a bookseller. Today, they're much, much more, because they were able to pivot into new opportunities. And I think the entrepreneurs out there, and I know many of them are on this call, many of them are on this this broadcast. You need to be thinking about, how do I take that skill set and that talent and the resources I have today? What you're doing may not be the in-demand thing, but how you can pivot that to something that is highly in demand. Because those are going to be the people, the ones who are hustling, the ones who are out there looking for every opportunity. And as you mentioned, Bruce, banks have money to lend right now. There's money out, but they need good business plans. Yeah. They need good business plans where they see a market emerging. And if you're one of the ones at the front of that line, get out there. And the worst they can tell you is no. And then there are lots of others who you can go and explore with, as Bruce mentioned, so that one no isn't the final no for you. You just keep going.
Yeah. It's interesting. I have a colleague who owns 21 nail salons. And of course, what's happened to the nail salons. They had to shut down. Of course, you saw the governor is going to open them up, I believe, Friday or Monday. And so what happened, Keith, and it's interesting on this conversation, he literally, if you ever go in nail salons, they wear the mask, right? Those are N95 masks. So he has an importer where he's already pivoted over to another business model, interim of not being able to do his regular business. And he's already imported hundreds of thousands of dollars worth of N95s and turn around and, sell them at a decent price, whatever, back to some of his customers, per se, in larger magnitudes, of course. But, it's interesting. And I want to keep the optimism, as I opened earlier, about, there's some great ingenuity is going to resurrect out of this downturn. And I just believe that. I'm hearing as much as the unfortunate doom and gloom I hear in terms of people not getting loans, et cetera. But I'm also hearing, as Keith said, and I'm starting to hear different ways of people, cleaning companies, chemical companies, where in terms of types of aerosols, watch this. I have a friend that has 3 restaurants. He's building it up in Alpharetta. When you walk in, the sinks are in the front. and they're in the restroom. So a lot of these interesting things are changing and evolving. And I just think that it's going to create a tremendous amount of motivation in terms of because everyone's cabin fever ready to get out. And so that's the optimism I'm seeing, is people pivoting and being very creative in terms of changing their business models and adjusting. Myself, a retail jeweler, my wife, who runs, has, in the last several years, we went online, and I've had conversations with small mom and pop retailers. For anyone who's in the retail commodities on this call, is the challenges of how big Amazon and some of the big online, it's harder for the smaller retailers to compete. And giving them information in terms of the e-commerce, what's affordable, what's out there, and what are some of the other ideas on your vending capacity, as well as your smaller showroom and a bigger, more robust online. So a lot of things are changing fast, but I still say that when we open the floodgates, is because it's literally going to be a floodgate, and it's going to be a tremendous amount of opportunities. So. Prayers. I'm a faith man. I believe God's got us, and that's who I am. That's who runs my business. That's who runs my house, and never been forsaken on it. And that's some of the encouragement, because no one really knows. But one thing we do know is faith overrides anything that goes on in our economy and anything in life. So I just want to share the good news as when we do open up.
Okay, next question is for you, Keith. How does an employer connect with your employment program? Is this program solely available in the SE, and are employees screened or insured?
So so the best way to connect to us, in fact, the slide that we were hoping to leave up at the conclusion of my presentation tells you the different ways to get in contact with us. You can go on our website, goodwill.org. I'm sorry, Goodwill NG. So Goodwill NG, the NG stands for North Georgia, goodwillng.org, or careerconnector.org, just like it sounds. Or you can call us directly at 404-420-9900, and we'll direct you to the various resources. Now, as far as it relates to employees, again, I want to stress, we are a judgment-free zone, and we know that many of the folks who come through our doors don't have the perfect pedigree or the perfect background. In fact, some of our folks have come out of the criminal justice system. Some of our folks have not had great success in some of the jobs they've had in the past. But when we give them our soft skill training and we work with them about building up off the skills and experiences that they have, we find we've been able to turn around a lot of folks who other people have given up on. So when you come to us, yes, we look at your background, because we're going to be very direct with you. We're going to make sure you're drug screened. We're going to make sure that we do a criminal background check, not to eliminate you from jobs and not to tell you what you can't do. But for example, if you have had a violence issue, we're not going to suggest you apply for a daycare right away because they're simply not going to hire you. We don't want to try to mislead you. But if you're a person who maybe has had trouble in certain positions, but with the right soft skill training, with the right type of working with you to make sure you know how to communicate more effectively with your supervisor, with your colleagues, with customers, then you can turn from that person who sort of had a limit on their potential to where there is no limit. And now you can go out and reach some of your greatest dreams. But we had a fellow who came through one of our programs, and he was Georgia Tech grad, had MBA, and he described to us recently, we featured him at a retreat recently, and he talked about how going through one of our programs gave him just that one piece of confidence that he was missing. This is one little thing. He had all the technical skill, had all the education type stuff on his background, but going through this program gave him that one added piece of confidence. Now he is working with a major employer and has started up a side business that we've helped him create. Sky's the limit. So judgment-free zone, bring your skills, bring your good attitude. The only thing we won't do is try to motivate you to get a job. That's the part you have to bring to the table yourself. Everything else will help you.
Okay. Question for either of you gentlemen. Is anyone tracking data related to the number of small businesses attempting to fund their business during this trying time? And data showing women-owned and minority firms are not able to fund their businesses with conventional loans. This is a good time to showcase these challenges. So do either of you know of anyone or any entity that's tracking this information?
Well, I do have, I believe and I'd like to, I think, if you go to sba.advocacy and click on Georgia, and it's called Small Business Profiles. And I'm waiting on this first quarter of 2020, and we were about to get those until everything got shut down. And as soon as we open back up, I'll have the first quarters. But it does mention and talk about how much in terms of what Georgia has, how many banks and loans have been acquired. And it gives you the 17, the 18, and it gives you the 19 numbers. But in terms of this particular crisis, obviously what goes in SBA and what comes out is going to be data that's going to tell in terms of, how many loans were processed and how many loans were approved. So after this, that business will be open that data will be open to the public on sba.gov, which will be our advocacy office in terms of where it shows the data, especially in this particular climate right here.
Okay.
Well, I think it's pretty obvious, from the tenor of the questions that are going to Bruce, that certainly the things we hear, I'm out in the community a ton. People are just scared. I mean, people are really afraid right now about the fact that many of them have spent enormous resources, but a ton of time in their education, and they developed a good team of workers, and suddenly this thing hits. So yeah, there's just great fear, and the data, I'm sure, will confirm some of those fears. But as Bruce mentioned, be a person of prayer, but also get out there and hustle. Don't wait for God to do it all for you. God gave you the strength to get out there and be pushing those every lever you can. So do it. I mean, because this thing has hit across the board. Certainly hit our folks more disproportionately than others, but that's always the case. So I think we need to recognize that and jump in and do your thing.
Yeah.
Okay, question for you, Keith. Where do you see the biggest issues for transit agencies as they begin to open up in the near future?
Is this for Keith?
Good run from it.
No, I think transit is going to have the same challenge that we're going to have in retail, that folks are having in restaurants. And that is, will people feel comfortable being in a restaurant with 50 other folks who they don't know whether or not they're healthy? And will people get a bus or a train? Now, some people are forced into it because they don't have any other options. But the people who have options, who have choices, will they voluntarily get on a bus, go into a subway, do those type things when there's still these questions in the air about is their health going to be compromised by doing that? Until we get a vaccine, I just have a feeling that it's going to be a little slower getting people in the stores, in the restaurants, on the buses, on the trains. It's just going to be slower for a while. And then hopefully you'll see folks' confidence will go back up. Remember when 9/11 hit, and I remember very well, I was a deputy city manager out in Charlotte, North Carolina, and the airport was part of my portfolio. We were all thinking, well, the airlines will never come back. Airports, people never trust them. They came back stronger than ever. And the biggest group that we did not foresee coming back strong were the concessionaires, the restaurants inside the airports. Because remember, back in the day, you could bring your food on the airplane with you. But with all the new regulations that occurred, the groups who prospered the most were those restaurants, because now everybody had to buy a meal before they got on the airplane. And so the stores, the shops, and restaurants boomed as a result. We're going to see that type of entrepreneurship spring from this as well. But it's slow going for a minute in terms of getting people's confidence back. Then once it comes back, and what form it comes back in, the groups who are best able to pivot to that direction, they're going to be the ones who are most successful.
And pivoting on that too, I have a friend that owns a chemical company here in Georgia, a large one, Original 7, and they've already started their due diligence in terms of sterilization, in terms of mist that they can put in buses and rooms, and then also, Nassau has the one where there's lighting. The lighting's going to change that, the UV that relates to killing bacteria. So everything, we pivoted off of 9/11. I agree, Keith, because I was on the board at the time here in Georgia, in terms of what I said, gosh, are we ever going to come back from this? And I say we're going to come back even stronger, because we're only going to get better in terms of our hygiene, in terms of putting things in place. And I'm starting to see that already, in terms of air filtration systems, with my buddy that owns one of the second largest heating and air companies, who's implementing new air filtrations in restaurants and homes. And so we're going to get better. And that's actually going to spur new businesses. It's also going to spur consumer confidence. And y'all know what good consumer confidence does. It spurs a tremendous amount of growth in business and commerce. So I'm still optimistic about this. I see it. I see the light.
Thank you all. Thank you, Bruce LeVell and Keith Parker, for your presentations this morning and for answering these questions. I have 2 additional comments that I'd like to make. And Bruce, I'd like for you to get a response for us on one. Yesterday, we heard that Shake Shack what returned or did not accept a $10 million, I'm assuming it was PPP, dollars that they were allotted, because they said that they thought better of it, and that they realized that there was micro businesses who were in greater need than they were. So I would love for you to find out from us, with that $10 million, and I'm not sure of who their bank was, have those dollars been put back into the pot, and what is happening with that? If it is as they communicated on the news and every place else, that's $10 million that could possibly help any number of micro and small businesses. I'd love to get an answer to that. There are several people who've asked about additional dollars that are out there. Bruce has mentioned that we hope that, and we've heard in the news, that Congress will pass another stimulus package today. We're hoping that will happen. And that once that package is passed, those that are already in the queue will hopefully be pushed to the top to be considered, along with this $10 million that Shake Shack did not accept. So we're hoping that will occur. Additionally, we will send to everyone a couple of funds that we have heard about that are on the local level. Fulton County has put $1.5 million into a fund that is being administered by Access to Capital for Entrepreneurs. So we'll get that information out to you, and there are a few others. So look to get that from us. Again, thank you for joining us today, Bruce and Keith. Thank you to our audience. And now we'd like to have a closing message from our sponsor. And this is the Atlanta Business League's weekly COVID-19 Issues and Opportunities series. Thank you very much.